Hi, folks, and welcome back to the Star Wars Library, where Star Wars is in print, and we're going back to the newspaper strips today to talk about a story called Revenge of the Jedi. This was published in 1982 to 1983, so we're slowly getting to Return of the Jedi. And timeline-wise, of course, we're still in 0 ABY. But you can find this story across two trade paperbacks. The first one is obviously our Rebel Storm that we've been going through quite a bit often on this show. But then we're going to finish it, and then we're going to go into the final classic Star Wars trade called Escape to Hoth. And this will be our final trade of the newspaper strip. So we're also almost done with these. So, of course, the story starts in here, and it begins. Darth Vader basically has taken over his new Super Star Destroyer, and he crashes it into a Rebel Alliance supply depot. And so he decides to christen it the Executor. And so then we jump back to our main heroes. We see, they're in search of new allies. Basically, Leia is attempting to meet with Admiral Akbar, which is kind of cool that we're seeing a Return of the Jedi character now. Remember, Jedi has not been released yet. By the time this ends, we'll be a couple months away from Return of the Jedi, so it's kind of cool to see that now. And also, this timeline-wise, we're still right after A New Hope. So they rendezvous. So this rendezvous goes bad, and so she, Han, Luke, Chewie, and the droids end up having to go look for him on this rain world called Dalvuge, I think is how you pronounce it. It's like or Deluge, pardon me. Um, and basically, it's this rain world. It's kind of like Camino in a way. It's just all rain, and so the Falcon is basically dragged into this mud lake by these giant worms, and it's actually what we see on the cover here. It's the Falcon getting pulled in. So this is basically what you're going to be seeing. And so um, they also, are almost killed by an Imperial commander named Orlok. Admiral Akbar ends up saving them by convincing the worms to fight for them. So again, that's kind of where it is, and then it kind of sets up for Admiral Akbar going to go and eventually help the evacuation from Yavin to Hoth. So, um, Revenge of the Jedi is an interesting thing because um, there's a lot of I guess history with that because initially, um, and I'm sure a lot of Star Wars fans will know this, but in case you don't, George Lucas basically, when he was writing the script for Episode 6, he was always intending on calling it Return of the Jedi. Return of the Jedi itself has a lot of different, I guess, meanings. Some people interpret it as Anakin coming back to the light side and fulfilling the prophecy of the Chosen One. He's coming back, so it's the return of him. It's the return of the Jedi. Some people also say that it's Luke Skywalker returning to his home planet. Some people say that it's um, Luke being the first of the new Jedi. Me personally, I kind of look at it as um, both ways. Anakin comes back to the light side, and Luke is the first of the Jedi, the first of the new Jedi. But anyways, that's beside the point. The producer, I think his name is like Howard something. I think his name was Howard. I think it was his first one. Gary Kurtz, I know, was A New Hope and Empire, and I think it was like Howard something with a K, I think. But anyways, he told George that it wasn't. He didn't think it was a very compelling title or a captivating title. So George went away, and then a little bit later he came back and he said, "We're going to call it Revenge of the Jedi." And then I think it was like a week or two before the release of the movie, George came back and he said, "No, no, no, we're going to change it to Return of the Jedi because revenge is not a Jedi concept." Um, so again, I think it was actually a teaser for Revenge of the Jedi. And of course, there were posters and stuff, which those were changed. Which, if you can get your hands on those, that's a hot collectible. You can get a lot of money for that. But anyways, it's kind of interesting again that they would use that title for this. It's a little interesting. Again, this is um, I guess it's weird because Jedi's almost arrived as of now in the real world. You would assume it's still called Revenge of the Jedi. So why would you call, um, your story that has nothing to do with the movie Revenge of the Jedi. Very weird. We also get to see Han use Luke's lightsaber. It's not the first time he uses it in Empire. Uh, we get to see it here. So it's kind of interesting, and all that. This story, like I said, will carry on into this, but more so a little bit later in the next part. Um, Again, first time we see Admiral Akbar in the expanded universe, which is very cool. In terms of publication, at least, we do see him, I think, a little bit earlier chronologically, but of course, publication-wise, it's the first time. So again, is this an essential read? I think yes. I think that again, introducing Admiral Akbar and setting up that that ultimate uh, plot that we'll see later on in the newspaper strips, I think it is an essential read. It definitely is not one for the overall expanding universe, but definitely one you might want to check out um, if you are at all interested in the newspaper strips. So, folks, that is all the time I have for today. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you next time with another episode of the Star Wars Library.